Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the Social Hiring Masterclass series brought to you in partnership with LinkedIn Talent Solutions. I'm Megha from the People Matters team, and I will be your host for the day. So, what I'll do is I will briefly introduce you with the topic that we are discussing today, and then I will take the opportunity to introduce our speakers as well before handing it over to them. This masterclass series, like I said, is an exciting certification program where we are conducting multiple modules covering critical aspects of social hiring. Our first module was on Be Branded, Build Your Own Social Profile, which focused on the key aspects of a successful social profile. Our second module was on Planning for the Future, Architecting Passive Candidate Outreach. So that module really focused on how do you plan for the future and build a successful pipeline by engaging with passive candidates. And today we are here for the third module, which is on influencing others, define your communication strategy. And today we are going to focus upon what are the critical aspects of your own communication strategy when you talk to not only externally with candidates to really engage with them, but also internally with your stakeholders to get that buy-in. We will also have the last module, which is module 4 on Storify Your Impact, leveraging data to influence. Just to share a brief about today's topic, a little more about the objectives that we're trying to achieve. At the end of this module, you should be able to design an engaging job posting to elicit maximum interest and excitement. You should be able to define key elements that should be covered during conversations with the candidates on social platforms. You should be able to build strategies to architect internal conversations with the hiring managers to create the buy-in. I will just need one moment to help you visualize what I'm saying as well. So I hope all of you can see my screen now. All right. So now that really brings me to a point where I'd like to introduce our wonderful speakers who've taken our time to share that invaluable information on the topic at hand today. We have the privilege of having with us Subhashish Mishra, who is the Director, Talent Acquisition at Target, and Deborah D'Souza, who is the Senior Talent Advisor at LinkedIn. Just sharing a little brief about our speakers so that you know them and you're more comfortable hearing them as well. Subhashish is a global HR leader with 17 years of experience in technology, media, and entertainment business across Asia Pacific and North America. He currently leads the talent acquisition function for Target in India. With a proven track record of handling multiple business stakeholders of a wide range of businesses in both emerging and mature markets, he is a veteran in his field, and vast experience of working with Fortune 100 companies is what he brings with himself. Deborah has over 6 years of experience of working in the automotive and investment banking industry. She joined LinkedIn in 2015 and is currently responsible for hiring talented sales professionals for India business along with the support functions. Deborah is passionate about creating an inclusive and diverse hiring environment, along with delivering a best-on-planet candidate experience to the job applicants. I like the way, Deborah, you say best-on-planet candidate experience. Welcome, Subhashish and Deborah.
Thank you very much.
Fantastic. So I would also like to take this opportunity to share a little bit about our partner, LinkedIn Talent Solutions, who've actually brought in their expertise and experience to not only craft this particular module, but the entire series on social hiring, which actually is a niche topic, but really in-demand topic. LinkedIn Talent Solutions offers a full range of recruiting solutions to help organizations in various sizes of growth to recruit relevant talent, build their brand, and grow their businesses. Founded in 2003, LinkedIn connects the world's professionals to make them more productive and successful. With more than 500 million members worldwide, including executives from every Fortune 500 company, LinkedIn surely is the world's largest professional network on internet. I know we have a very exciting topic at hand, and Deborah and Subhashish are all set to take you through the topic. But just before handing it over to them, I would also like to let you know that I'm sure you can see a question and answer panel on the right side of the video. So you can enter your questions throughout the session there. And Deborah and Subhashish can pick up questions from there to answer you. We also have a dedicated time at the end of the session where we may try to take more questions as much as the time permits. So without much further delay, let us begin with this interesting discussion today. So over to you, Deborah and Subhashish.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Megha. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third edition of this masterclass. My privilege to be working with Subhashish and delivering this to you. Unfortunately, the internet is not cooperating, and therefore we can't see Subhashish at this time. Hopefully, we should be able to have him on board soon. But in the interest of time, we're just running ahead with the program. As we get into the first part of the whole communication strategy, we just wanted to talk to you a little bit about how you can design job posts that would elicit a lot of responses. Craft your communication with candidates accordingly as you network and engage with them. And finally, creating that buy-in with the hiring managers to make your whole hiring endeavor successful. As we get into the next slide, which is talking about the talent landscape, one thing that we really need to talk about is how the digital revolution has changed the way the job seekers behave. Information about organizations, about careers, about people is more widely available than it ever had been. And as a result, this has led to what we most commonly call now a talent-driven market. Earlier on, it was very binary, where people were either active or passive. Active when they were actively looking out for an opportunity, and passive when they weren't. But with the evolution of the way that we hire, this has become much more fluid, and people are more open to opportunity and casually browsing more than they ever have in the past. So one of the major shifts that we see in the job seeking behavior is the open talent mindset. They are more open to an opportunity if it is put in front of them. And therefore, if you present an opportunity in short, impactful bursts, that's when it makes the most sense and relevance. People are now browsing on their mobiles even more than ever before. And so when you're riding in your cab on the way back to work or even waiting in line, that's when they're actually seeking out. So that's a little bit of a shift to lay context. And now I'd love to hand over to Subhashish to talk to you about how expectations have changed and what candidates hope from us through the way that we communicate.
Thanks so much, Deb. First of all, before I jump into the slides, I just wanted to share how excited I am to join this conversation. And also, just to kind of piggyback on Reshma's introduction, I spent pretty much all my life in HR, but particularly in the last couple of years, I've been focusing on talent acquisition. And it's been an incredibly exciting journey for me personally, because it's given me a window to how our talent landscape is shifting, how talent is pretty much behaving as consumers behave in terms of new products and services. So it's given me an amazing, fresh sort of perspective on how we should connect with talent. And that brings me to this slide of how the talent landscape has changed. And it's happening around the world, including India, particularly more relevant in emerging markets like India and China, where there's a lot of young workforce, which I'm guessing most of you are on the call are, and how our aspirations have changed. So, in the previous generation, we know how a job was more about what the company was for. So it's not so much about what the company does and what is the business the company is into, rather what problem are they trying to solve in the world. And the talent is also looking to solve large problems which can impact humanity. It takes me back to a particular case study that a lot of you might be familiar with. When Steve Jobs was hiring for the CEO of Apple back in the 80s, he met with the PepsiCo chairman at that time, and he asked him, do you want to sell sugar water for the rest of your life, or you want to change the world? And that statement could not be more true than today. And which is where we as talent acquisition team should be focusing and figuring out how we can connect that language into our sort of communication. Flipping back to the next slide. Research has highlighted that there are some common things that candidates desire, and it's a universally core need of respect from employees, from their employers, but they're also looking for a good, healthy balance of challenge and care. I've seen in my experience, a lot of companies sort of skew in one way or the other. There are a set of companies who focus disproportionately on the challenge that you get in your work. I can think of many companies where we talk about innovation and empowerment and stimulating work and challenging work, but sometimes we forget about the appreciation, the connection aspects. As we know, we are human beings. At the end of the day, we need the connection and appreciation. But on the other side, I've seen companies who disproportionately focus on the care aspect, where they talk a lot about work-life balance, flexibility, the community. Again, the question is, it's not or, it's and. So we as the talent acquisition team or the talent branding team or the recruiting team, how do we balance this both core aspects of communicating challenge and care? And that's where the future generation of workforce is going to sort of tap into our communication. Therefore, we have to make the shift in our language, and Deborah is going to dive deeper into what that means for job descriptions and how we should communicate. But staying pretty much at that high level, so we have to make a fundamental shift from being very company focused or being very we focused to being very you focused. Because we work for our companies, we are so engaged in our work, we tend to become very internal, our own company focused, instead of sort of trying to figure out what that means for the talent that we're talking to. For example, again, we are at Target, we are in the business of detail, we are in the business of servicing our guests to shop and have a great experience. We could look at it in two ways. One way is how great we are as a retail company, what kind of products we have, and all those things are important. But what is more important is what that means to the talent. The talent is caring for what does that mean for him or her. So where we have to shift our language to how the talent that we're going to attract can help our shoppers create have a great experience and what role they can play in that space. And that will resonate more to the sort of aspiring talent who is trying to look for a job in us. Same with company facts. So we should move beyond company facts of revenues and number of employees and presence. All of that stuff is pretty well known. It's we shouldn't waste our time in sort of sharing things that people can Google. Instead, we can speak to some of the softer aspects of what makes our company tick. What is it that's so unique about your organization, your value proposition that a talent should be aspiring for, or the talent should be resonating with? And what kind of behaviors that you celebrate. What that does is actually it not only attracts the right kind of talent, but it can also eliminate the talent that won't fit your ethos. Last year, I think I was in a meeting and a company was just talking about an advertisement they had in the jobs where they talked about what they don't want, which is kind of refreshing to me. You usually see companies advertising of what they want, who they're looking for, but this is kind of breaking the clutter when the company says, this is who we don't want. And imagine somebody reading that statement and figuring out, oh, that does not describe me, and that's not what I'm looking for. So in that way, you're actually attracting the right talent, but you're also making sure that the folks who are not resonating with those values and that proposition are actually staying back, which is helpful and more productive. Third aspect of what can you do for us? Again, because we're so internally focused, we're consumed with our business and our need to hire talent, we are focusing on what can the talent do for us. Again, that's very important, but again, shifting that to how they can contribute to that story. What is the role they can play in your success? It's pretty much in line with how our marketing groups communicate with our consumers. It's so intuitive when you're thinking of a consumer and how to communicate with them, because marketing has done that all through the evolution of corporate world, but it's time that we as HR and talent acquisition groups pretty much think like our marketing peers think about our talent, which is our consumers. continuing the same path, from being task-driven to passion-driven, from being very functional to moving to how do we inspire and engage this talent, even when they're looking at us as a potential employer. So my next slide actually highlights this point very clearly. I thought that I'll take this example because it sort of speaks to something that we as our own organization at Target are learning. So these are two slides side by side of similar jobs. One was posted by Starbucks, the other one was posted by Target, and both are the same job. There, if a lot of you who may know, and for those of you who do not know, there are Starbucks inside a lot of Target stores in the United States. So sometimes we advertise as a Target corporation. We advertise those jobs, which are Starbucks jobs, and Starbucks does the same too. Now, if you look at the comparison, the Starbucks advertisement and the job description is so much more compelling and inspiring. Starting with the headline, it says now viewing leaders and hashtag to be a partner. So it starts with leadership, and it goes back to why Starbucks does what they do. It talks about the CEO's vision, what store managers do. So if one's reading the job description, very high probability that they will walk away very inspired and energized with the job description. And again, at the cost of sort of our own job description, the right side of the JD does not engage, does not inspire, which is what we're trying to move away from. So hoping that this contrast resonate with all of you who are listening into this webinar, and sort of connecting with how we want to shift our communication and our conversation with the talent, starting with job description. And now I flip it back to Deborah to kind of deconstruct what that means as we dive into the details of job description. Deborah?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Subhashish. So the next slide that we have for you really talks about what a good job description should contain. We think that this is the most ideal format, and as you can see from the example that Subhashish shared with you earlier, it really is the first impression that you're leaving a candidate with from your organization, right? The words that you craft, the kind of language that you use will have a direct response on the number of applicants that you receive. Really badly written, vague job descriptions with unrealistic, expectations, and then just go on and on with technical jargons, they can turn away a lot of good candidates who might want to apply. At the same time, such job descriptions can also attract a lot of unwanted applicants, making it taking it much longer to sift through all of the applicants and arrive at suitable talent. By following these proven job posting methods, we really think that you can hire and attract higher quality candidates and also speed up your time to hire, both of which will, of course, make you a recruiting hero in your organization. So what we suggest is divide it into 3 parts. Talk about the organization. It could be a summary of what you're trying to do, and tie it back to the vision and mission, right? You can put in some words from the CEO, like you saw in the Starbucks example, but basically that should be the eye catcher, right? What we're trying to do as a whole, and then boil down to you. From that perspective, you could write job responsibilities and also basic and preferred qualifications. Now, the reason that we suggest basic and preferred qualifications is that we have a lot of applicants, some of them just as good as the other. But what preferred qualifications do is they really help you stack rank one against the other. So if you have candidates on par in terms of the process, this just enables you to maybe make that decision in favor of the more preferred candidate, right? Some of the pro tips, and you'll see this a lot during this webinar that we'd love to share with you, is that when you're posting a job, right, the after effects of it is encourage your employees and hiring managers to share jobs so that it percolates through the networks. What better place than maybe even your hiring manager saying that this is my team, come work with me, right? There are a lot of innovative techniques of posting jobs. I think we've seen this through example is HCL's viral video, where they have spoken with a comical take on a job description, and the result is it shows the culture of the organization in such a light-hearted, amazing way, right? And one thing that as a recruiter that you need to be mindful of is that a strong or top quality job description should actually compel a quality candidate to apply rather than weed them out. All right. With this, we get into the next part of our conversation, which is the key elements to cover during conversations with candidates on social media. Just to recap, I'm sure a lot of you did attend the amazing webinar on, the passive candidate outreach, and one of the conversations that they spoke about was identifying your value proposition as an organization. If you could go to the next slide, please. This essentially is basically, as a recruiter, you need to understand and identify along with your other colleagues what the culture of the organization is, what the scope of work, what kind of exposure they'd have, because these are common questions, right? The learning and growth opportunities, the vision and purpose, and tie all of these together, as you communicate. The next aspect is, how do you make your opportunity stand out? You have a lot of applicants, but you want to attract the right talent. Focus on the responsibilities versus the role. This can be both tied back to the job description as well as in your conversation. Talking about that sense of ownership and what the person would be responsible to do is so much more effective than just writing down what the role entails. Talk about what outcomes and success looks like versus the skills, right? You want to have inspiring leaders on your team. You want to have people that motivate versus saying leadership qualities, right? That's intangible. So talk about that. Talk about the kind of career path. What is in it for me, right? This you cannot necessarily have in a job description, but you need to be able to articulate this for that particular job. And also incumbents of the role. What do successful candidates look like? Have this as you research and prepare at the top of your mind, because intelligent, smart candidates are going to ask you this, right? And this you can do by also talking to team members, understanding from them what would a good or an ideal team member do, how would they be valuable to the team, right? And with that, we get into the next slide, which is an effective communication strategy itself with the candidate. Now, before we get into this, you need to understand what communication is, right? It could be one-to-one or one-to-many, as you saw in the previous webinar. But essentially, it is a two-way process, right? You exchanging ideas, you're exchanging information, and the crux of the matter is that you share meaning. What candidates are looking at from their conversation with you essentially is, are you telling them the things that they want to hear, number one, and are you enabling them to realize or rationalize what they need as a next step, right? And are you showing them that direction? So for a communication to be effective, I think the most fundamental questions we need to answer are the who, the what, the when, and the where. If you look at the slide and the explanations beneath that, the who is, of course, the candidate. Understanding who they are, and social media today definitely helps. You can look at the companies, you can look at the colleges, their background, where they hail from, right? Their interests, who they network with, who they're connected to. Understanding them gives you a lot of information for you to leverage during your discussion as well. The motivation. Something that I do as a part of the storytelling, which will be covered in the next webinar, but what we commonly use at LinkedIn is to look at top drivers, right, of why people are actually looking out for a change. I ask them to name top 3 things. It could be anything, right? It could be stagnation, it could be growth opportunities, it could be compensation. But I would also suggest, just as a pro tip, is take meticulous notes, because this really comes in handy at the time of offer, which you will soon see in the next part of this webinar. Understanding the when. This was something that the previous webinar also spoke to you about, passive and active candidates. With passive candidates, they're just consuming information. So for example, career pages where you talk about a lot of the vision and mission, you talk about employees in the role, testimonials, what the workplace looks like. That's information for them to take. But when it's active, you're actually having a conversation, and really you need to understand the motivation from the previous side and frame your conversation accordingly, delivering the right message to them at the right time. And of course, the medium. The endeavor as a recruiter is always to pick up the phone and talk. I think that's something that definitely helps us as we go through our career. But figure out if a candidate is more responsive over email, figure out if they like to be, sent updates over different social media, figure out what works, and you can push out communication to them accordingly. And I think that with communication also, it's very important how you communicate and what phase of the candidate journey that they're at, and you're with them at that stage. And would love to hear Subhashish talk to us about how we can communicate with them through these various stages.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, it's kind of going back to my earlier point on looking at a candidate as a consumer. And again, sort of borrowing from the playbook of marketers. I know at the cost of sounding and borrowing a lot from marketing, but that's kind of the reality we live in. And we have to look at our candidates through these lenses of where they are with respect to their journey with us. And we have to help the candidate imagine a future with us or you, and look at it from where they are. There are times when you know that your talent, the candidate that you are targeting, is familiar with your brand. But there are times, either because you're going into a new territory, you're going into you're trying to attract a new skill set, you realize that, well, the candidate doesn't even know who I am. So for example, Target is a retail company. Now, a lot of people associate Target with retail. If I'm going big on data science and going into data engineering, how do I connect the dots between data engineering and what that means for Target? So we have to look at it from that awareness lens. Who are you, and how we communicate our work to this talent who assume we are building awareness. And I think in the social platforms, it's important that we segment our talent population, and depending on what our priorities are, what kind of roles we're hiring for, we have to sort of shape our communication through that lens. Same with vision and purpose. I think it's important that we tailor it to that particular talent segment. For example, we are heavily investing in supply chain. So while our vision and purpose as a company is to sort of elevate the joy of everyday life for our guests, that doesn't say anything about supply chain. So the vision and purpose on supply chain is how do we create a supply chain and inventory management that simplifies the life of a guest that's shopping at Target. Same with how different other brands are communicating to customers. I think I talked about Airbnb in the past. So their big vision is to make living or staying in other cities as if you're staying inside your own home. So they're a hospitality company, and they're like any hotel. But they've elevated that sort of language into a whole different level. And it appeals to the consumer, because if I can connect to that idea that wherever I go in the world, I can feel like as if I'm staying in my own home, it connects with me, as opposed to saying how amazing the homes are and so on and so forth. So it's important that we build the awareness through that sort of interesting communication. What's your culture? Again, I think I touched on it, but again, it's important that we touch upon this at that level of building awareness, because as we know, a lot of times as we are looking at a new job, or our talent is looking at the new job, the skill sets and the work may be similar, but what you're offering is a unique culture. And a lot of times we lead with that point of why somebody should work with us and not as a competitor, even though the work is same. A lot of times we hire let's say we are hiring software engineers, and maybe the problems that we are trying to solve is it's not unique or the same as some of our other competitors. So what's the uniqueness there? The uniqueness is our culture. And if that we can communicate cleverly and sort of authentically, that might resonate with somebody who does not know enough about you. Moving on into sort of the life cycle of the candidate, once you build the awareness in the candidate's mind, now you're in the step that you're not really building, you're not really trying to tell them who you are. But that does not mean that you have sort of converted that talent, that elusive talent that you're seeking. Now we will try and have them consider us as a serious player in their sort of job aspiration. And there, our language needs to shift. We're no longer building awareness, we are kind of giving them more exposure into the inner work of our company, of the organization. So what kind of work are you doing? What's the different kinds of problems that you're solving? So if I know company A and company B, and company A is telling me about the work, the complexity of the problems that we're solving, the kind of people that I'm going to be working with, what kind of impact I'm making, that might excite me more than company B, which is not telling me any of those things. So I think when we look at when you know that with a particular job, sort of group of jobs that you're hiring for, you know that you're not building awareness, but you are just trying to create consideration, you must sort of think about how you change the language. A lot of times we just think about going with the same kind of language. For example, in the past, we did not differentiate in our communication based on the life cycle of the candidate's journey with us. So every time we would say, oh, we are Target, we are one of the biggest retailers in the world. But in the case where somebody already knows me, I'm not really building consideration, I'm just repeating the awareness factor. Once I kind of got through the whole life cycle journey and aspect of a candidate, we shifted our language and we shifted our conversation. Then we started focusing on the complexity of the problem or the impact that they're making, instead of saying who we are and why we are the greatest company on the planet. Because at that time, we already told that story. The last part, and I think that's the most sort of complex part and more sort of harder part, is conversion, where the candidate has already considered you, but you have to convert that candidate from being a candidate to an employee. And this particular window is a lot more about sort of the in-person interaction more than social interactions. So let's say it goes into the territory of real experience that we are giving candidates. How are we telling authentic success stories of other team members? Here we have to really hone in on real story, real problem solving, and delivering that disproportionately differentiating experience that our competitors have not done. As we all know, we are almost always talking to candidates who are weighing in on multiple options. There are candidates who have just one job and they don't have a choice to make, so they take that opportunity. But the real elusive talent, the kind of talent that we aspire to have, more often than not has more options than one. And there we're competing against some of the best competitors, and we are trying to convert that candidate towards us away from the competitor. And that's when we have to deliver that experience to the candidate, which is differentiating. So I hope that you are able to see how our communication needs to be tailored based on our understanding of the evolution of the candidate and the life cycle of where the candidate is vis-a-vis us, and so that we can customize our conversation and communication accordingly. And we think there's a lot of success stories. I would be curious to continue this dialogue through one-on-one conversation in terms of how you're applying this to your sort of workplaces. With that, I give it back to Deborah again.
Awesome. So now that you know about what the content of what you're saying, how do you know that it's being effective, right? How do you know that you are able to communicate the right things, that candidates are getting impacted, that the candidate experience is becoming better, right? And you're seeing more success stories. This brings us to my next slide, which is essentially measuring success. Some things that we do at LinkedIn to really measure success here and also at Target is look at the quality of applicants and hire. You will steadily see that you have more motivated employees joining you who are completely clued into the whole vision and mission of the organization and how their work plays a piece in the entire life cycle, your conversion funnel will get better. So instead of maybe having conversations that really used to go to a conversion of maybe 1:10 or 15, you're putting 3 or 4 quality candidates through, and you know that you're going to get your hire through this. Your time to hire is also impacted because you end up from the previous 2 steps having silver and bronze medalists through your process. And therefore, when you have another role that's similar, you would eventually see yourself move into this proactive mode of hiring, and that will bring your overall time to hire down. Another thing that I really wanted to share was about CSAT, or the candidate satisfaction surveys. We at LinkedIn are measured by this percentage as well. So we send this out to people who received an offer and who didn't receive an offer. And basically the questions are around the recruiter, the interview team, and the process and coordination. What the questions are centered around is, did the recruiter set and exceed communication expectations through every step? Was the interview process really well designed? Were the questions fair but challenging? And also, were you all speaking the same language? Did the culture, which is the commonality, shine through, right? And also, was it well coordinated? Did the candidate walk away feeling excited about the interview, about the culture, and about joining the organization, right? And you will see through this whole progression that candidates are leaning more and more into the opportunity, into your organization at every step, if you've done all of these things correctly. Just a couple of pro tips really quickly. Don't email, talk. Pick up the phone, meet in person, Skype, WebEx, wherever possible. Send more than just updates, right? It's great to talk about significant, milestones that your organization has reached, but also in terms of combining this with the point of offering feedback. What we also do at LinkedIn is we send candidates, say, this is what you're doing great, focus on that. This is where you can improve. This is an opportunity. And as recruiters, appreciate what the person is bringing to the table. That ties back to what Subhashish is saying, and sound humane, right? It's always good to approach with empathy. It is a very nerve-wracking process to be in, and to know that they have the recruiter support is really essential. As we move to the next slide, one thing that a lot of people were asking was the offer and post-offer engagement. We have a very competitive environment, like Subhashish was talking about earlier. And these are just some communication things that you can do to ensure that you're staying in touch with the candidate and avoid any last minute surprises. So at the time of offer, make it a big deal. Talk about what they came in for, the candidate motivators, and tie that back to how they've seen it through the process, and also what a journey it's going to be. Encourage your hiring managers to get on a call and congratulate them. You will see this little picture that I've put of a urine card. That's something that we do. We make the whole team sign and send it to them, right? Post-offer, make it a point to touch base with all of your candidates, send them updates on the candidate, on the company, set up a meet and greet in the team. It's always great to know the team that you're going through, and invite them to company events. You can have an NDA if you're sharing confidential information in place, but it's a nice practice to have them as a part of it, and basically send out emails and updates to the entire organization when people come on board. With this, we get into the last part of the conversation, which is the hiring manager piece, where we learn to build strategies to architect internal conversations with hiring managers and create their buy-in. I'm not sure how many of you online were able to be there for our top social recruiter events, but essentially over there, we spoke about the next slide, which is the modern recruiter. In this, we spoke about the artistic side and the scientific side. The artistic side was a combination of all of the conversations that you have, the information that you provide, how you're marketing jobs, how you're matchmaking, right? And the scientist part of it was really talking about data, how fluid you are with technology, how much of research you do, and how well you're able to read cues, right? If you are wanting to move from a recruiter mode to more a talent advisor mode, this is something, both sides of the coin, that you need to possess. We all can't possess all traits, but it is something worth aspiring towards, because that makes your job well-rounded and more complete. So that's coming from the theory side of things. How do you implement all of these things to create a great buy-in and rapport with your hiring managers? I've called this slide creating the magic, my next slide. And essentially what I'm trying to talk about is how do you set up a communication cadence and how do you build trust? One thing is that trust is not built overnight either. Jeff Weiner, our CEO, says that trust is essentially consistency over time. So they need to see a certain set of consistent behaviors from you to be able to build that solid relationship. If you go through creating the magic, what we follow is, first of all, scheduling intake meetings. This is where you and the hiring manager meet, set context, set expectations, and talk about the key priorities of the role, what does success look like, state of the department, growth opportunities. You need to freeze in on what you're looking for and what you aren't looking for, because that's equally important. Set expectations, and the most important thing, something that I've really learned at my journey at LinkedIn, is holding each other accountable. We have something which we call clean escalations, which basically says that if this is what I guarantee to you through this process, if I'm unable to deliver on this, please feel free to reach out to my manager and let's see how we can solve things, and I will do the same for you. Right? That accountability is a must if your relationship needs to progress into one that is working seamlessly. Talk about target companies, the kind of skill sets, titles, determine must-have versus nice-to-have, right? Sometimes we over-index on the nice-to-have and forget all about the must-have, so let's not fall into that trap. After you've done this and you've done your search and sourcing, what I recommend you do is also have weekly check-ins. Set up 30 minutes of time, preferably over VC, where you're talking to them about the kind of work that you did in the last week, some standout candidates that you want to share, maybe some difficulty that you're having and you want the hiring manager to provide an overview on, some obstacles that have surfaced basically. And here you don't necessarily say, I put 10 resumes forward. Focus on quality, saying these are the kind of discussions I've had. This is what the candidates have told me. They're so tuned in. Let's take things forward. As you move further into the process, you need to ensure that you and the hiring manager are aligned, that you're speaking the same language. In order to attract the top quality of talents, they need to know that their professional and personal goals will be cultivated at your organization. And you need to make them feel that it's really a matter of pride to be working at this workplace. Ensure that you and your hiring manager are on the same page when you are communicating what it is. And I'm a firm believer that when you're choosing an organization, you're also choosing your manager specifically. So really talk about what is the bonus of being on the person's team? What are they bringing? How can they help shape their career, right? Why would someone want to work with them? Important part of the whole process is also debrief and share feedback. We make it a point to call the hiring managers after each interview and talk to them about what went well, what could they develop, and just keep tying that back into interview feedback so that you know how well you're doing and see better conversion rates. And the last, by nurturing this relationship, that it, instead of becoming hectic and unproductive, you are more concentrated on what the hiring manager needs, clued in, and essentially bringing in a happy candidate and a happy hiring manager in the process. The last part is, of course, on data and metrics. Keep talking about you need to be a thought leader and keep in touch with all of the recruitment trends. So keep reporting out data, any major shifts that you're seeing, hiring, unfortunate layoffs, but where you could possibly capitalize on those opportunities. Talk to them about that, right? One more thing is, in terms of our pro tips that we'd like to offer you, is train hiring managers on recruitment. That is not their forte. We are the subject matter experts. And so it's very important that you set organizational expectations as well as what is expected out of the process. Talk to their team, be in touch with their business so that, I help with sales recruiting. A lot of candidates ask about quota, about business, etc. You need to be clued in to answer these questions. So the more research you do, the better it is. Don't shy away from succession planning. We have a lot of internal talent as well as external, and you need to plan your activities accordingly. So make sure that you're so clued in on their team that if you know there's internal candidates, you don't have to focus on a role, you can focus somewhere else. And basically, work a better succession plan. And when there is a lean time, when the hiring manager is not, actively recruiting, Plan for a pipeline. Set up coffee discussions, have them meet with candidates, engage with people. If they're focusing on diversity, now is a better time as any to make that happen. And the last part that we want to cover today is how do you move? It's not only communication, right? It's moving from a reactive to a proactive mode, and not communication alone will get you there. These are some of the traits that we believe that you need to develop to become, a proactive recruiter and a talent advisor. Like I was saying earlier, business acumen, it's very imperative that you develop that. I think Subhashish will also, after the slide is done, talk to you about the importance of that. Building trust and relationships, it takes time. Invest in the relationships. Make sure that you are making every attempt to talk. You're not an order taker, but you are a value deliverer. Be a thought leader, be a subject matter expertise. There are so many social platforms. At LinkedIn, we have Elevate, where we are able to share articles on and also blog on our own, right? So be a subject matter expertise. It's always great to get feedback about what you're thinking and talking, and essentially putting yourself out there so that you mature and grow. And the last part is reiterating all the time with the hiring manager that it is shared accountability. It's not us taking orders, like I said earlier, but it is a matter of importance to their team, that we're building their team, helping them build their team. And therefore, you are holding each other accountable to making sure that you all are seeing success through this whole process. Awesome. So with that, Subhashish, we have some questions on the line. Would love to take a couple of them. I will read them out to you, and we can pitch in accordingly, right? So one of the questions that have come in is, when we talk about organizations, what facts can we include?
Deborah, you want me to take that?
Yes, that would be great.
Yeah, so thank you for the question. As I shared, I think it's important. There are so many facts of our organization. So we have to decide, again, if you look at it through the lens of who this challenge is and what we are trying to communicate, we really have to hone in on from the candidate's perspective. What is it that's going to be more meaningful for you, for the candidate? So either it's the culture, it's the work, kind of problems that we're solving, what kind of people are they going to work with? A lot of times, I think the impact of the other side of impact of the work that they are doing is incredibly powerful information that we don't share. We kind of focus on the work, but not the impact. I remember some time back we had communicated something about our Target.com team was doing, and as a result of the work they were doing, they were going to impact about 100 million searches on Target.com. So if you say that your work, whatever you're going to do, is going to impact 100 million transactions, that sounds so much powerful than saying you're going to tweak with this software and that's your job. So how do you elevate the work to a level where you feel the difference that you're making? I think that is important. That's a key sort of lens through which we should look at. Our communication. Sometimes we have to look at how do we sort of highlight the development that we impart on our talent. And the development is not through just the training class, but through other kinds of work, that exposure that they're going to get. How do they solve? Folks in Bangalore, for example, in our organization, are impacting how consumers are shopping in the US. And that is not a learning that comes through a training class, or that comes from the job. But if you're able to communicate how they're impacting hundreds of millions of people and their lives and how they're elevating their experience, I think it resonates with the candidate. So I think it's important that we look at it from that perspective. I hope that helps them.
Perfect. Thank you, Subhashish. I think this next question we can both take a stab at. When we are communicating culture, how do we put this across to candidates? And I think this comes from the space that some have articulated their culture and value tenets, and some haven't. So if you haven't, Subhashish, how do we put this across?
Yeah, it goes back to my point on the balance of challenge and care, right? A lot of times organizations tend to kind of acquire certain perceptions in the marketplace, and that perception may or may not be true. So it's our job as the branding team or the communication team or the recruiting team to create the right perception, which is a good mix of care and challenge, and not sort of get swung towards one aspect. A lot of times we get skewed towards one aspect. And it's important that we communicate both, because as talent and as candidates, we're looking to understand both aspects of my life in a company. How can I solve great problems, but at the same time, how can I be a fulfilling human being? How can I be a fulfilling family member to my family? And a lot of times in today's world, we are trying to, in this sort of environment, we're flexing everything. We live a very dynamic life. We're trying to integrate our life with work. We don't want to compromise on one thing against the other. We want to do challenging work, but not at the cost of me being a fulfilling dad or fulfilling mom. So how do I communicate both to the talent? And that's how it's going to be important. We also have the New York Times article that came out against Amazon took a big toll on Amazon's brand, and that's not just that may or may not be the exact stories that play out in the real life, but one side got more impact than the other. So that is a great example of how we can create wrong perceptions in the marketplace, and that's our job to kind of create the right balance.
Absolutely. So for me, I'm fortunate that I come from an organization where our culture is very, very clearly articulated and it's laid out. We plug that into conversations with candidates and talk about the impact that a very strong culture will have on their career, right? One thing that while I speak about it, I also invite them to come into the organization and experience it for themselves, because like I said, that ties back to the whole hiring process, their interaction with people. Culture is more, it hits harder home when you see it played out, right, with every interaction, and therefore tie it back to having them come in and maybe interact and see how they feel in the whole atmosphere.
Just to add one last point, I just got something else got triggered, that I think to your point, authentic stories resonate more than just sort of HR stories, right? So that's why we are leveraging a lot of our real team member stories, which don't come across as sort of architected and fabricated. These are stories that team members give from their own sort of experience, and as much as you can communicate that side of the life in your organization, that probably have more resonance than sort of HR corporate lingo, if you will.
Absolutely. Which is a very nice segue into our next question, which is how can internal employees act as companies' ambassadors and engage potential candidates to apply for a job at the organization?
Yeah, do you want to see that? No, I'm happy to chime in as well.
Absolutely. So your biggest proponent, right, is your employee. Them talking about how, having roles, having this role has impacted both maybe their work and their personal life. You can have them share on social, blog about it, leverage them during the hiring process as well, right? One thing that I do tell a lot of my candidates is that if you want to know more, I encourage you to connect with X, Y, and Z so that you're able to hear firsthand, right? I might just be a recruiter putting my salesperson or marketing hat on, but hearing from a person in the team about what success looks like, even the challenges, right? It's not all a bed of roses, and they should be clear about the opportunity that they're getting into. So just talking to them through that, and also leveraging them through the hiring process, right? Peer interviews, asking them to lean in on conversations, clarity in terms of one-to-one discussions on what the role entails. So that's something. And what they can also do is, like we shared and articulated earlier, share on social media. There are innovative ways in which a lot of videos are done about employees who have the current role. So leverage those conversations to propagate that in a one-to-many setting. That's my opinion. So Bashish, if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, just to sort of extend that idea of keeping it real. Even talking about failures, I know it's become become a cliche to sort of say this, but I still don't see a lot of organizations sharing their failures. And that's something that we must sort of try to convey. I think every time I see only stories of how everything is great, people solving great problems, and how everything is kind of phenomenal, makes me wonder, like, is this company even failing at all, or are they failing at all? So if I can communicate the real life in a company where there are tons of failures, and how you work through your failures and how you learn from your failures, and then how you kind of apply that learning into something and then become success, that's much more real than just saying how successful your last launch was. Because I'm pretty sure that last successful launch was coming after a ton of sort of failed attempts at that product. So we're trying to get to that phase of how we're communicating. You may not be able to do that in job descriptions, but there are other medium like blogs. For example, one of my team members here at Target, and she's a recruiter, she shared a story of how one of our diversity initiatives started off as a big failure, actually. But it went on to, we learned from that, and it went on to become a big success story. I think that resonated a lot with folks that were reading that story. I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely. I think that's a very, very valid point that we often don't consider. So with that, thank you very much, Subhashish. Thank you everyone for joining us. We hope that you found this insightful. Just a reminder that that a recording of this webinar will be sent out to you. So and also we would be gathering feedback. So do be open, honest with us, and we'd love to hear your thoughts. Happy recruiting and all the best from Subhashish and me to you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening in, and I'm so excited that we got this chance to interact with you. I would love to hear from you as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It was fantastic. I really enjoyed what you've shared. I know there were a lot of questions we could not take questions, but please feel free to respond to them in your free time. And also to the audience, I would request you to send questions to Deborah and Subhashish. I'm sure you can find them on LinkedIn. So that's one social platform where you can definitely find them. Thank you for taking out time, to you, Deborah and Subhashish, and thank you all as an audience for taking out time for this session. I know, like Subhashish said, there were some initial technical glitches, but technology has its own way, and we managed to grapple through it and have a wonderful session today. And I would also like to thank LinkedIn Talent Solutions for helping us design this wonderful session. So that really brings us to the end of the session today. Look forward to your feedback and more questions. Thank you. Have a great day ahead.